Hi there, how are you? I'm Mr. Muso. Let's start our lesson for today. Today we are talking about the sources of history, the sources that are used so that we could know more about what transpired long ago, the sources of history. What is a source? A source is where we get historical evidence. A source, it is where we get information about what transpired long ago. Long ago, people were involved in so many activities. They were involved in hunting, they were involved in agriculture. So for us to be in a position to know more about how these people were surviving, we are supposed to use sources. These sources, they are revealed, they unpack about what was done by these people long ago. For example, a source. I'm going to use water for you to bath, for you to drink, for you to wash your clothes. You are supposed to have a source. Water is our source, but we get this water from the bowl, kocho 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 kocho, so that we could get water. Vamwe, what do? They go pamgodi, then they will chera the mvura, then you get water. So mgodi is the source. Vamwe, what do? They go at a tap, open the tap, then you get your water. Tap is the what? Is the source. Vamwe chichaita now, they go ku damu nemugomo vonochera oya wakati nkiringindi mugomo kumusoro chii chiri kuitika. You manage to get water yawakakera, that you are carrying from the source. Source ndeipi? Damu. So you are in a position of getting water. You are in a position of using water. You are now looking good because of water. You washed your clothes because of water. Bambirira because of water. You are smiling because of water. But where did you get this water? Dam, tap, mugodi, so we are seeing that we have got so many sources where we can get water. Mudamu, tap, etc. So you are now having water. The same applies with the history. The same applies with our wonderful subject, history. We are in a position of getting information about how people survived long ago through using several sources. These sources unpacking, these sources telling us more, telling us much. The people were surviving long ago. So we see that sources are vital. They are important because they unleash, they tell us, they inform us about the ways of life that were done by the people who survived long ago. When we are talking about the sources of history, we use examples of people who survived during the pre-colonial time. Pre-colonial history will be giving examples of the people, the Stone Age people, the Iron Age people, the people at Mapungubwe. We also give an example of Great Zimbabwe. We also give an example of Mutapa State. We also give an example of the Roji State and the Ndebele State. So this is what we refer to as pre-colonial people, pre-colonial states, although the states start at Mapungubwe going upward. But we'll be giving examples from Stone up to the Ndebele State. Then, if we talk about history, we'll be giving examples of the Stone Age, Iron Age, Mapungubwe, and partly Great Zimbabwe. We'll be talking about the time when history was not written down. So this was the time when history was not mostly written down. So that is what is meant by the term prehistory. So you're supposed to know the difference between prehistory and prehistorical. Prehistorical, all the states, but year before the history was written. So we'll be explaining, we'll be unpacking, we'll be discussing, we'll be talking about how these people were. We use so many sources in the discovery of pre-colonial people, in the discovery of pre-colonial history. There are so many of these sources, and they include oral tradition, written records, archaeology, rock paintings, linguistics, and anthropology, which is also known as ethnicity. These are the sources that we use in the discovery of pre-colonial history. Let's start with oral tradition. The term oral, it means orate. To orate, it is to speak, like what I'm doing. Eherekende, yistirinkindirinka, okondokondiria. I'm orating. I'm telling you, I'm talking about history, how people survived long ago. That is orating. So we see that this history is narrated. It is described. We are told about this history by those people who survived long ago. So what happened here is that the early historians, the Eurocentric writers, the Eurocentric historians, they visited the sites that were inhabited by these people. They went at the sites that were inhabited by the Stone Age people, the Iron Age people. They also went to Mapungubwe. They went to Great Zimbabwe. And when they went, they were told about how the events took place at these areas. But as they were told now, we see that some of the people who witnessed the events were dead. So they were told possibly by the sons of those people who remained behind, or the grandsons of those people who remained behind. And by so doing now, they now wrote, we are going to talk about written records later on, about what they were told about the ways of life of these people. What were they told? People, they were involved in agriculture, cultivating crops. They were told that these people were involved in the keeping of animals, pastoralism, keeping cattle, goats, and sheep. They were told that these people were also involved in trading with foreigners. They were also involved in the payment of tribute, paying tribute to their leaders. So we are in a position now of knowing all these historical events. Why? Because of oral sources. So the Eurocentric historians visited Great Zimbabwe. Vashika pai tishikeo tashika pano garai apa murungo a white person muveta tishika pai. Yes, I'm Mr. Johnson. I'm from Harare. I've about how the people of Great Zimbabwe were surviving. I want to know more about how these people were doing their things long ago. Then you can imagine Muvet auya, Murungo auya, Bamba penyu Muvet auya akushanyira by then. Unomanya you run around Muvet. Because you can imagine if some of us they never greeting a white person, we have never done that. But here now auya now wanting to know more about your ways of life. Unomanya and so forth. Garai apa ndagara dzanangura explain how your people is surviving. Then you start to explain now. My people they go Great Zimbabwe. They were involved in this and that. They did this and that. Mirai papo. I also want to know more. Yes. Then you explain. So through that now we are in a position of knowing more about how these people were surviving. Why? It is because of oral sources. It is because of orating. History being told by the word of mouth. So as a result, the ways of life that were done by the early people. It is, however, important to note that our history was first recorded by the whites. And when they recorded this history now, they had a negative thinking about the ways of life of the early people. They thought that Africans were backward. They thought their history was not worth recording. So when they went to record the history of our ancestors, the history of our grandfathers, grandparents, they had a negative misconception about how these people were surviving. So when they were told about how the people were surviving long ago, we see that they later on did not portray exactly as they were told about the ways of life of the early people. So that on its own, it explains why we have got some problems later on when we come to states like Great Zimbabwe, when we come to states like Mutapa State, who was responsible for the formulation of the Great Zimbabwe, who was responsible for starting the Mutapa State. We now see controversies on who was responsible for the beginning of these states. We now also have controversy on the factors that led to the rise and expansion of these states. Why? It is because the first people who recorded the history of our early people did not thoroughly do so. When they did this recording, they had a negative misconception about the ways of life that were done by the early people. So through oral sources now, we are in a position of knowing a deeper history on the ways of life of the early people. There are so many advantages of using oral tradition. Oral tradition, it is cheap. You go to Great Zimbabwe, you go to Mutapa State, you go Roche State, you go to sites that were inhabited by these people. Washikapai, when you arrive there, Kole, I'm here, I'm Mr. John, so I've come to know more about your history. You see that Kole, Torah your seat. Take your seat. I want to know more. Then the Kule could start now to explain. These people were they were Kintiri or Dokontiri. So that on its own now we see that it's easy, it's cheaper. So the use of oral sources, we see that it is cheap. You don't use a lot of resources to know more about oral tradition. You can also ask questions and clarifications. Kule, explain. Antina kunzwisisa Kule, explain. Kule. Then the Kule could explain now. Unaona chimzokoro paya ndangani chini. Then the Kule could be explained. Kule, clarify. What do you mean, Kule? The mambo yet two hearts and he had powers to change the colors of animals. Akaona mombe red, akati fire. The mombe red could become black. He had so much powers. So the color will be clarifying now. So through that now, we are in a position now of knowing a detailed account on the ways of life that were done by the early people. So we see that the use of oral tradition, it has got a strength in that you get clarifications, you can ask questions. And the use of oral tradition, again, is important in the sense that one can get a detailed account. Narration of events can be told, and by so doing, getting a detailed account on the ways of life of the early people. Then it is also accessible to those people who are not in a position of reading or writing. For example, you are not in a position or someone is orating, someone is talking, you in the talking, like what I'm doing, I'm talking in the talking, so you can hear, and that on its own now, it is a very important. You can understand, you can know about history, you can even live like history, you can love for this wonderful, powerful subject, history. So through what are being orated, being told about the ways of life of the early people. Although we see these trends in the use of oral tradition, we've got some weaknesses. One of the weaknesses is that one can forget dates and names of people. We see this, for example, at Great Zimbabwe. We don't know the early rulers of Great Zimbabwe. We don't know about the dates on when Great Zimbabwe was founded. You've got controversies, Afrocentric theories saying that Great Zimbabwe, it was founded around 1100 AD. They say so. Why? It is because they say after the downfall of the Mapungubwe state around 10th century, a new state was formed in the name of Great Zimbabwe in the 11th century. So they say that the downfall of Mapungubwe state led to the rise of this state which was known as Great Zimbabwe. But the Eurocentric ideologies, they disagree. They want to believe that Great Zimbabwe was built around 1200 to about 1300 AD. Why? Because of the artifacts. Why? Because of the relics, the fossils that were excavated, which depicted that Great Zimbabwe, possibly it was built around that time. So we see we have got different dates on when Great Zimbabwe was built. Why? It is because the first sources now did not on was founded. Then we also see that oral tradition, it has got a problem in the sense that one can exaggerate information kunyepa because you can imagine iwewe ipapo watching me, you ndaya kumba kwen, I come to your home, I want you to tell me about your father and your mother, about your family. Aonga but say Muso, you know what, at my place my father, he is a thief, my father, he loves what you don't say, oh my mother, he loves gossiping, you won't say that. So Mr. Muso, you know what, my father, my baba angu akapenga, my mother, my way kubika chete kungo dai unotodona pasi rute, my mother is the you. Why? Because you can't say bad things about your people. So the same applies here. When these historians visited these sites, the early people, they ended up exaggerating information about the ways of life of their ancestors. So that is why we have got problems on the political organization of the Roji state. On the political organization of the Roji state, we are told that the Roji state controlled the whole of Zimbabwe. Is that true? We are told that the Roji state lasted for over 100 years. Is that true? We are told that the Roji army used spies and also medicine, and it could make the enemy sleep whilst fighting. Whilst you're fighting, whites shooting, Portuguese shooting, the Roshi could do that. Is that true? So we said that some of the things that we are told about the lives of the early people ended up being exaggerated. So as a result of that, now it brings controversies on the political ways of life that were done by the Roshi people. Not only the Roshi people, but you can go even to the downfall of Great Zimbabwe. What led to the downfall of Great Zimbabwe? What led to the downfall of the Mtapa state? What led to the rise and expansion of Great Zimbabwe? That is why later on, D.N. Beach, he talks about the pendulum effect. Why? It is because some will be saying that, some will be saying that. Why? It is because it's coming from problems associated with oral tradition. So we are seeing that oral sources, they've got some weaknesses. So these weaknesses, they bring about what is known as multidisciplinary approach, or they bring what is known as integrated approach, whereby the weakness of one source brings another source. So by bringing another source, it means that that weakness now is now being covered by the coming in of this source. So the weakness of oral tradition, it brings in another source in the name of written records. So oral tradition is good, yes, but Ori has got a problem. Ori does not give us names. He forgot names. He forgot dates. So Ori, you have got a problem. So you problem of Ori, I am Riti, I'm now coming in to integrate, to cover you up, because I'm seeing that you don't give names and you have forgotten the dates, and unonyepa, you exaggerate. So I'm coming in my name is called Riti, so Riti is now coming in place of what? Of Ori. So this in history is called integrated approach. It is called use of multidisciplinary approach, making us now to get a detailed account, making us now to get a complete account on how events unfolded long ago, making us to know more about the ways of life of the early people. So this now is very important in the study of history, the use of multidisciplinary approach. So let's talk about written records. Riti, blazo writing, it means writing down. So what happens is that the historians, as they visited the sites that were inhabited by these people, they were told by oral sources, they were told by primary sources about how events took place. So when they were told about how events took place by the elderly people, by those people who witnessed the events, they came down. Mr. Johnson came down and he started to write down, writing down about what he was told by primary source, by oral sources. So when he wrote down the information that he or she was told by primary sources, it brings about now written sources. So these are written documents, these are written memories on how the early people were surviving long ago. So we see that the early historians, the whites, the Eurocentric ideologies, they wrote that Africans were barbaric. Africans were bloodthirsty people. Africans were warmongers. Africans were half child, half devil. Oh, Africans were savages. Oh, the terms that are used here, they are too strong. Savage, backward, bloodthirsty people, warmonger, half child, half devil. They suffered from mental capabilities from the early age of puberty. Vaitombotwanya, they could twanya, they could penka during the early age of puberty. Saka, these Africans, they were barbaric. Nothing at all is worth recording about their history. So because of this now, we say that their history was not worth recording. So that is what they wrote about the history of our ancestors, the history of our early people. They did not thoroughly research. They did not thoroughly give us a true account or a true version on how these people were surviving. So that is why we have got problems at Great Zimbabwe. Who built Great Zimbabwe? Some whites want to think that it was built by the Europeans. It was built by the whites, the Arabs, the Swahili, the what. They want to dismiss that it was built by the Africans. If some archaeologists, even they to hire people to distort information that Great Zimbabwe was built by the Africans. Why? It is because the Eurocentric ideologies, the first people who wrote our history, they looked down upon the ways of life that were done by the early people. They thought that their history was not worth recording. So this on its own, it brings controversies later on these states, at Great Zimbabwe, at Mtapa State, at Roji State, and also at the Ndebele State. We are told that the Ndebeles had a raid in culture. They raided the Shonas. The Shonas were at the verge of extinction. Is that true? It is because this history, the first history, it was written down by the whites, and they did not give a thorough account on how the early people were surviving. But however, with the rise of African historiography around 1940, 1950, we see that Africans were now educated. They rewrote the history of the early people. They rewrote what was earlier on written. They corrected what was earlier on what written by the Eurocentric ideologies. They clearly showed that Africans were responsible for the building of Great Zimbabwe. They clearly showed that Africans were the people who were progressive in nature, who were involved in agriculture, pastoralism, who had a well-established political and social activities. They to do away, they too had been earlier on given by the Eurocentric ideologies. So because of this now, we see that textbooks that we are going to use, some will be saying this, some will be saying that. So there will be controversies, theories, disagreements on how events transpired, on how events occurred. Why? It is because the history of the early people, the first people who wrote this history, did not thoroughly write what exactly transpired on the ground. They were interested in justifying colonization and also the exploitation of Africans by exploitation of Africans done by them, these Europeans that we are talking about. There are so many advantages of using oral or written records. One of the advantages is that the information, it can last for a long period of time. It can be used by so many generations. They can use this information, and as a result of that now, we see that it is important to use written records. We also see that another advantage is that the written sources, they give pictures. They give a vivid picture on how events transpired, on how events took place. So as a result of that now, it makes history interesting. It makes those illustrations it makes those illustrations, and those illustrations will make you understand how exactly these people, the early people that we are talking about, were surviving. So it is important to use written sources in the study of early people, in the study of pre-colonial people. However, written sources, they've got weaknesses. These weaknesses are that they suffer from subjectivity. The writer writes what he or she wants us to know, and as a result of that, distorting the information. So that on its own now, it gives again problems on the early states. We are going to see this at Great Zimbabwe. We are going to see this at the Mutapa state. We are going to see this at the Roger state. Why? Because subjectivity. Writers were writing what they wanted us to hear, but what they were giving us, is it the real information that took place on the ground? It's not. So that on its own now, it brings now problems later on. The test books that we use, they are expensive. You can imagine I'm staying where in the rural areas, I cannot buy textbooks, so it means that I'm not in a position of knowing history. I'm from deep down there. It means that I cannot purchase textbooks. So as a result of that now, I'm not in a position of knowing more about how the early people were surviving. So that on its own, it brings a challenge in the study of history. So you are seeing that Riti has got a problem. Riti has got a problem. Yes, you've got a problem. Why? It is because you are expensive. It is because you tell us what you want us to know. So because of your problems now, I come in. I'm there to assist you. My name is called archaeology. So the weakness of written records, it brings in another source. It brings in a key. He comes in now. So we are seeing the significance. We are seeing the importance of using multidisciplinary approach. We are seeing the significance of using integrated approach. Weakness of one source, bringing another source. By end of day now, we are in a position of giving a detailed account on how these people were surviving. So I'm coming to assist you. What is your name? My name is Aki. I'm coming in to assist you because I'm seeing that you have got some weaknesses. So all right, come Aki. So Aki now comes. So Aki, when he comes now, he comes with the tangible evidence. You know, my name is Aki. You are seeing this thing. It's called tangible. This thing, I can see it. I can hold it. You know, this one is a bone. They could eat. They could luma a bone. This is a bone of a kettle. This is a bone of a mombe. They could keep mombe. So you're in a position of knowing that these people were keeping mombe. They were involved in pastoralism. You see, this one is a bone of a rabbit. These people, it means they were involved in what? In hunting. So we are having tangible evidence. You are seeing that this is a clay pot. So it clearly shows that these people, they were involved in pottery. And if you use Phimister, the book Phimister now, he illustrates, he gives us pictures of pots. He gives us pictures of pots that were designed, that were made by the early people. So those pictures now, they were designed using different designs. And those different designs clearly showed that these people had different cultures. But Eurocentric ideologies failed to realize this. I will talk about this later on. Then we move on. You talk about iron tools. You see, this one is a ibadza. This one, they could timber and digger using a badza. So we are not in a position that were involved in agriculture. This one is a spear. They could buy you. They could buy red in other tribes. This one, they could use it for hunting. The spear, the axes, they could cut down trees. Cutting down trees, clearing land. They practiced the type of agriculture that was known as slash and burn. So we are in a position now of knowing more about the ways of life of these people. You are saying that this one is a jira. So jira now means that these people, they were involved in trade. They traded with the foreigners, the Arabs, the Swahilis, the Portuguese. They were in a position of getting clothes and so forth. You are seeing that this one is a necklace, beads. So these people now, they were now involved in trade because they could get these beads from trade. Jewelry, it is gold. You are seeing it. So they were involved in in a mining. So the artifacts, the fossils that were dug, they revealed a detailed account. They revealed much on the ways that were done by the early people. They could tell us exactly what happened long ago. They could now reveal clearly what the early people were doing long ago. So we are in a position of knowing more, knowing much about the early, Stone Age people. We're in a position of knowing the people of Great Zimbabwe. We're in a position of knowing about the Mutapa people, the people in the Ndebele state. Why? Because of the fossils, tangible evidence that were excavated by archaeologists, that were excavated, dug by these archaeologists, and as a result of that, now we are in a position of knowing the ways of life of the early people. So archaeology is an important historical source that we use to dig more, to know more about the ways of life that were done by the early people. We see that Eurocentric ideologies, archaeologists, they did not see anything archaeological on the artifacts, on the relics that they dug, that were used by the early people. They in fact had to say that the artifacts, the fossils that they dug clearly revealed that the Africans were warmongers. They could buy each other, they could kill each other using spears, they could kill each other using axes. So it clearly revealed that these people were bloodthirsty people. It clearly revealed that these people were warmongers. This, however, is true to a lesser extent. Why? It is because Eurocentric ideologies, they wanted to discredit the ways of life that were done by the early people. Instead, we know that they used these fossils, they used these spears, they used these axes to what clear lands. They used these spears to hunt. So we see that what these Eurocentric ideologies were saying is not what really transpired on the ground. So as a result of this, we see that it does not reveal about the ways of life of the early people. So there are so many advantages of using archaeology. One of the advantages is that we get tangible evidence, iri ibonzo. So that on its own now, you'll be seeing nemaziso and you could understand better. If you go to Great Zimbabwe Museum, if you visit the Great Zimbabwe Museum, you're going to see many artifacts that were used by the early people. Go to Bulawayo. Bulawayo Museum is so rich, very, very, very rich. You see again many artifacts that were used by these people. So that on its own, you are having a picture on what really transpired long ago. Then we also see that the use of archaeology is important in the sense that it unpacks, it unleashes the tools, it unleashes the items that were used by the people long ago. So we see that the use of archaeology, it is important in the study of pre-colonial people. However, it has got some weaknesses. One of the weaknesses is that it does not give us names or totems of people. For example, iwe bonzo iwewe wakachigwa nani, bonzo can't so indakachigwa na jagina na zuze na, it can't say that a bonzo. So as a result of that, now the artifacts that we dug, they don't give us names, they don't give us the genealogy of the people. And we also see that the artifacts, to excavate them, it's expensive. It needs a lot of resources, it needs a lot of money, and it needs expertise, people who have got expertise on how to dig these items. So as a result of that, now so many items, so many artifacts were not thoroughly dug out. They were destroyed whilst archaeologists were digging them out, and some of the works, they were left half done. Why? It is because of the expense what that is there when you are supposed to dig these artifacts. So as a result of that, now we have got half-baked information on the ways of life of the early people. Although we've got half-baked information now, we see that some dates were given through the use of radiocarbon dating. So we are seeing that Ori he has weaknesses. Riti, he has got weaknesses. The same applies with Aki. He also has got weaknesses. Aki, wewe unema weakness. One of your weaknesses is that you don't give us dates, you don't give us names, the genealogy of people. One of your weaknesses is that you are expensive. Unodura iwe wasiana na Ori. Saka you have got a problem. Iwewe Aki. Saka problem yako iwe Aki. I'm coming in now in the name of rock paintings. The paintings that were done by the early people unonzani we Rocky, painty, what I'm saying? I was drawn Pamadziro. Depicting about the ways of life that I was practicing. So we see paintings of the early people being drawn. You go to Domboshava, you go to Matopos, you also go to Blawayo. Some of these paintings, you can see them. Sorry. So the early people, they drew themselves hunting, showing that these people were involved in hunting. They drew themselves herding cattle, showing that these people were involved in the herding of what? Of cattle. They kept Mombe, Mbudzi, Makwai. They drew themselves trading with foreigners, showing that these people were involved in trade. They drew themselves gathering fruits, showing that these people were involved in gathering. They drew themselves smelting iron, showing that these people were involved in smelting of iron. If you go to Great Zimbabwe, you are going to see that iron smelter that was used during that particular period of time. So these paintings, they reveal, they give us now a true picture on how these people were surviving. So it is important to use rock paintings. Why? Because they give a real picture, they give a vivid picture on the ways of life of the early people. So these paintings now, we see that they were dismissed by Eurocentric ideologies. The Europeans were the first people to explain, to give us a detailed account on our ways of life. The Eurocentric ideologies are to say that the paintings revealed the barbaric nature, they revealed the uncivilized nature of the Africans. They revealed that these Africans were bloodthirsty warmongers, people who were interested in wars. They to say that the spears, for example, Africans, they drew themselves holding spears. They saw that those spears revealed that these people, they were always fighting against each other. The axes revealed that these people were always involved in raiding and killing each other. They did not see anything historical about the ways of life that were practiced by the early people. So because of this now, we see they dismiss the paintings that were done by the early people. But this is not to justify Zimbabwe. They wanted to regard Africans as backward, which was not the case. So written sources now, they've got disadvantages in that the information, they can be vandalized. Some of the paintings, they might fade because of what? Of time. For example, if you go to Domboshava, we see some of the pictures, they were vandalized by the neighboring or the communities there. So that on its own, it can make us now have problems in knowing or portraying a true picture on how these people were surviving. So tiri kuona kuti we are seeing kuti Rocky ane problem, rock paintings ane problem yake ndeyekuti vandalization, my pictures are fading. So because of that now we see kuti izvo hatina information yakakwana yatinokwanisa kuziva. We are not in a position of getting a detailed account. Even the language, you don't know the language. That person who drew that picture herding cattle, that person who drew that picture hunting, aimbotaura chirudzi why. So because of that weakness now, we see another source ichiuya yakadongorera. Koya ndiwani wakadongorera. My name is Linguistics. Oh, unonzi Lingwi. Unobva kupi? Ndinobva kwa Lingwi. Come here, Lingwi. Hey, ndauya, I've come. What is your problem? Ndaona kuti Rocky une problem. Saka problem yako ndauya inini kuti ndizokubetsera. No problem. Welcome, Lingwi. So Lingwi now comes. So we now have another source in the name of linguistics. So linguistics now is the study of languages. The languages that were spoken by the early people. The languages that they spoke during the early times. So that on its own now giving us a detailed account on the ways of life of these people. When the whites came, they said that the Africans were similar. They did not see that these people spoke different languages. Why? It is because they were staying at different. They just regarded Africans as similar. Why? It is because they did not see anything different on their ways of of life. So as a result of that now, they left out a lot of information. For example, the Chinese, Wanangu, the viewers, everyone watching me, if you go to town or if you go to China, if you see the Chinamen, unongofunga kuti vakafanana, but maChinamen akatosiyana, iwo pachavo vanozviona kuti takatosiyana. Just like isusu vachitiona varungu, when whites are seen as vanongona kuti mablacki tese tiri mablacki, and they see and mablack akafanana. Just like what you say to the Chinamen, you say, Chinamen, you are fananarin, you are the same, you look similar, but they are different. And if you see the Chinamen speaking, you say, Chinamen, Chinese, but Chinese churches zimungwataura chindex, zimungwataura chishona, zimungwataura chinyanja, zimungwataura chikalanga, but it's not Chinese. You are saying that. So you now can research about the Chinamen, Chinese and chinonakidza apo vaitaura chindex, and ukasangana vamwe and the Chinamen chinonakidza pataitaura chishona. So that on its own now, it makes it difficult for you to know because you are not on the ground. So that is what the early historians did. They came, they visited the sites, they visited these people, and when they visit these people now, they do say that the early people are similar, they are almost similar, their ways of life are similar, their languages are similar. They left out a lot of information on how these people were surviving basing on the languages that they spoke. So as a result of this now, we see that information was left out on the ways of life of the early people. So with the rise of African historiography, around 1940, 1950, the Africans, they had to visit the sites that were inhabited by the early people. So when they visit those sites now, we see them now knowing that in Masvingo, the people could taura and taura. The language that was spoken in Masvingo was different to the language that was spoken in Chipinge. In Chipinge, they could taura, but the Shona was different from Masvingo. If they moved on to Mutare, the language that was spoken by the Wasumen was different. The Wasumen was not gwezhira kupi kumasvingo. The languages were different. If they come to Zimba, this honor is different again from the Masvingo Nekapeti. Then it's different from the Wasumen. If you go to Blawayo, the language again is different. So meaning to say that these people, their ways of life were different. Why? Because they spoke different languages. Number one, these people, their ways of life were different. Why? Because they were exposed to different environments. A person in Blawayo, the way the environment is different from the way the environment is in Manicaland. So because of that now, we see that now Afrocentric historians now, they had to research, they had to come up, they had to collect a detailed account on the ways of life of the early people, basing on the lingua, basing on the languages that were spoken by the early people. So there are so many advantages of using linguistics. It is because you hear for yourself, and as a result of that you could understand better. But lingui has got a problem, like Ori, like Oral, like Riti, written records, like Aki, archaeology, like Loroki, problem, same problem with lingui iwe language yako, and this kunzwa, I cannot hear chiwasu, I cannot hear otini wena nyakoloma nyahlekelela from Komandebele, Eko Blawayo, I can't hear. So because of that now, it means that there is problem of language barrier. You cannot hear some of the things that were said, some of the things that would be said. You end up distorting the information. So that on its own, we see that lingui has got problems in the sense that there is a problem of language barrier. Saka, there is a guy that I'm seeing, Akadongorera, who is Dongorera, I'm seeing you. Who are you? I am Anthropo. Okay, plus when before now I'm also known as ethnicity. Une two names. Unonzani, muso manners. Oh, come timbonzwa, iwe come anthro comes now. So we see that we have got another our source in the name of anthropology, which is also known as ethnicity. So here on anthropology, we see that let's start possibly by defining this term anthropology. Let's split it into two. Anthro talking about people, people, human beings, logy, the study. So we are talking about the study of people, just like biology. Bio, we are talking about plants, logy, the study of plants. So anthropo, we are talking about human beings, iwewe and inini, logy, the study of people. So when we are talking about the study of people, we are talking about the economy, what he did economically, what he did politically, what he did socially. It's almost similar as ethnicity. Earth kwa isusu people titogara pano pa earth. So tigara pa earth, we are exposed nature, economy, political and social. So these three define a person here on earth. Economy, anorarama say anthropology, economy, anorarama say economically. We are talking about history. If we split this term history, ye story, amen. Story. The stories of men, how they survived long ago. Economically, they were involved in agriculture. They were involved in pastoralism. They were involved in trade. They were involved in payment of tribute. They were involved in iron smelting. They were involved in mining. They were involved in pottery. They were involved in weaving. They were involved in basketry. They were involved in fishing. These are the economical activities that these people were involved in. So we are in a position now of knowing the economical activities that were done by these people. Politically, the term political, you are supposed to know that it refers to four things. The term political refers to four things. Number one, the role of the king. The role that was played by the king. Before the king, these people were led by elders. Elders, they were led by chiefs later on. Then later on, the kings. The role of elders, chiefs, later on, kings. You talk about the people who assisted the king. Number three, you talk about the centralization of the state. Number four, the role of the army. So politically, we are talking about these four items. Let me repeat them again. The role of the king, the people who assisted the king, the centralization of the state, and also number four, the role of the army. So we're in a position of knowing the political activities that were done by these people. Social, we are talking about four things again. Their beliefs, they believed in Mwari, worshiping Mwari in good and in bad times. They also believed in the existence of the ancestral spirits, the Mondoro, the spirit for the state, the Shikiro for the clan, the Shikiro for the family, the Vadzimu for the clan. So they were involved in the belief in the ancestral spirits. Number two, you talk about the culture that was practiced long ago. The culture that was there was that people were supposed to marry as many wives as possible. People who used the same totem were not supposed to marry each other. Number three, lineage. The people long ago, they lived as a lineage. So you talk also about that. People who used the same totem staying closer to each other. Number four, you talk about division of labor. Labor was divided according to sex. Men were supposed to do these duties and women were supposed to do these duties. So we are seeing that these four, they give us now the term social. The issue of settlement. That on its own now, we are seeing that we are having a detailed account on the ways of life of the early people. Economically, what they did economically at Great Zimbabwe, what they did economically during the Iron Age people, Iron Age period, what they did at Great Zimbabwe, what they did at the Mtapa State, Roji State, and Ndebele State, economical activities, what they did also politically, what they did also socially. So we are in a position now of knowing what detailed picture on the ways of life of the early people. So that is what we have on anthropology. So we are seeing that there are so many sources that are used to unpack the history of the early people. And these sources, they unpack, they review, they tell us, they give us a detailed account on how events transpired. However, they've got weaknesses. So the weakness of sources now brings in another source. And by bringing in other source, that is what is called multidisciplinary approach. That is what is called use of integrated approach. The use of one source, weakness of one source, bringing in what another sources, another source. So that is what we have on the sources of our history. Enjoy this lesson. Thank you so much. I'm Mr. Muso. Cheers.